Venant qui prendront la parole potentiellement en portugais, donc n'hésitez pas à déjà vous munir d'un kit de traduction pour être sûr de pouvoir tout suivre et ne pas devoir alterner après. So I invite you to already take the translation set to make sure you don't have to take care of that later on. Bon après-midi, bonjour à tous. Je m'appelle Vanessa Bovor, je suis chargée de projet pour la Convention des maires en Afrique subsaharienne auprès de la GIZ, l'Agence allemande de développement. On m'entend pas bien? Ah, ok, j'ai compris. Il me faut aussi que moi je fasse un set. Oui. Non, je vous entends pas. Yes. Yes. Non, je... Ok. 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 Noted. Okay. You all got that? Yeah. Oh, good. So I think I'm just going to stick to English. I hope that's okay with everybody. I think it will be easier. I'm sorry. I wanted to switch from French to English, but we'll try to make the job of our French friends at the translation booth as easy as possible. So I'll also slow down when I talk. And I also invite all of my fellow speakers today to pay attention to that. So I've been asked to remind you that channel 1 is for English, and the channel 2 is for French. So chaîne 1 pour l'anglais et 2 pour le français. Donc je pense qu'on est bon, on peut commencer. Donc, je vais reprendre mon intro. Yes, sorry. I can? Okay, that's why I'm confused. Okay. Okay. Perfect. So I'm going to just stick to English now and remove the headset so it'll be easier. So my name is Vanessa Bovor and I'm advisor for the Covenant of Maires in Sub-Saharan Africa at the GIZ. Before we start this session titled How can Sub-Saharan cities mainstream gender in their climate and energy actions? I would like to thank the sponsors of this initiative, which are obviously the European Union, but also the BNZ and the ACID Spanish Corporation for their support. And yes, so I think from there we can start. I'm particularly happy to be moderating today's session and tackling the topic of gender mainstreaming. For this, I'm actually accompanied by a great group of speakers and experts on the topic. So I will just quickly and briefly just welcome my speaker and who are on the table with me today. So we have Lucila Virot, who's professional officer for CoM SSA at Africa. We have Loide Masaige, who's Deputy Director for Mobility, Transport and Traffic at the Maputo City Council. And also we have Gilda Florentina Samuel, who is also Director of the Municipal Service of Social Actions at the Maputo City Council. We also welcome Adala Morelli, who is Research Scientist at the Kenya Industrial Research and Development Institute. And last but not least, Mrs. Fatima Tupu-Kress, who is head of the Studies and International Cooperation Department at the Urban Community of Nouakchott in Mauritania. So I would first of all really like to warmly thank all of them for accepting our invitation to a session today to tackle and really discuss how can we concretely mainstream gender in climate and energy actions that are led at the local level. So before we dive into the topic, some might ask why did we decide to have this session today? And as you may know, gender equality is one of the core aspects and at the heart of what we do at CoM SSA. So it might not seem as obvious because we are supporting local governments in developing climate and energy actions, in climate and energy projects, why gender should be at the center of that. But we will, as we'll see, we are supporting cities to make sure that we improve access to sustainable energy for all citizens. And that includes, and that involves a lot of specificities and considerations that needs to be taken into account to ensure that all citizens, men and women, female, and also in general youth groups, persons with disabilities, and other marginalized communities are also taken into account when developing such climate and energy actions. So this is what we are going to discuss today. As you may know, if you're familiar with CoM SSA, with the activities we develop, we support local governments in developing climate and energy action plans on the planning aspects, but also in terms of implementing, developing and implementing concrete projects, urban infrastructure projects, and we will see how we can take gender consideration and make those projects responsive from their conceptualization to their implementation and even later monitoring and evaluation. We also facilitate city-to-city exchanges and partnership, and we will also have the opportunity to touch upon how today those city-to-city exchange can also be an opportunity to tackle gender mainstreaming aspects. And I'm very glad to be able to officially launch today some of the resources that we have made available, concrete resource and practical resource that we have made available for cities who wants to also make sure to mainstream gender in the climate and energy actions. We'll have time to present those resources, but I already would like to invite you, if you haven't had the chance, to grab a copy of the guides that are outside. So they are available, both guides on gender analysis as well as gender participatory approaches are available outside in French and English, and you can also access a digital copy via the QR code that is on the screen. We have the chance to dig deeper into those presentations, but first I would like to first give the floor to our speakers today, starting with Adala Morali, who would present us a little bit more about the experience that was led in Kisumu, Kenya, when it comes to the access to energy assessment. But before that, just to quickly introduce, so Adala actually is research scientist at the Kenya Industrial Research and Development Institute, where she supports industrial enterprises in various sectors. Her area of focus is environmental management, climate change, and energy. She's also part of the Kisumu County Climate Change Technical Working Group, and where she extends her expertise to reach to the community through the Hawaii Lake Forum, a community-based organization. So I'm very glad that Adala is here with us today, and I will just give her the floor to tell us more about how gender can be taken into account when conducting access to energy assessments at the local level. So, Adara, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I believe I'm coming in now. So Vanessa has done quite a good job to introduce who I am. We just met 2 days ago, and since she's very, very articulate on introducing who I am, she's captured every bit. I'm from Kisumu City. Recently, we hosted Afri-Cities. I am sure a number of you participated in the Afri-Cities. And Kisumu is now here in Senegal, and I just want to extend, first of all, my thank you to our funders for the project in Kisumu County, that is Expertise Parks, GRZ, and this has been a great opportunity. We have walked a long journey with them up to this point. So next slide, please. That's my agenda for today. Is just to walk you through our CCAP journey in Kisumu County. And I will highlight the findings of our project, the key findings of our project in Kisumu County. And also I will highlight what we found were key takeaways in the project. Next slide, please. She's done that very well. So I don't think she's done that. If you look closely, you might see some resemblance between that person in that photo and the person who is before you today. So, there's a saying that we have back home in our country, and we say that when you go to the ground, things are different. Well, this is the ground for me. This is not every day organized and looking very put together. This is me. This is energy. I don't think I was laughing about the smoke burning my eyes at a particular point. I was cooking a meal for my family back home. Next slide, please. So, the background for this project that we did was anchored on what has brought us all together here. That is the global challenge of climate change and environmental degradation. We are sitting here in this room as many cities of the Sub-Saharan Africa, having a common goal towards sorting out this issue of climate change. Mayors, governors, administrators from different local government sectors have come together to work on this. And there's a local government commitment towards focusing on abating the issue of climate change. So basically, we are here to see how best we can move from planning to implementation of the actions towards unlocking climate finance, which was the session that we have just finished, which was quite interesting for me. Next slide, please. So why energy? Why Africa? The urban population rise. We are talking about 68% of the world living in urban areas by 2050. This means there's going to be greater demand for energy. This means that there are going to be other issues surrounding energy that might come up. Currently, 52% lack access to electricity, and 85% cook with inefficient and polluting stoves. So we happen to be the continent that is most impacted by this climate change issue. However, the financing still remains minimal. So we want to see how can we work towards unlocking more finances to help us deal with this issue of climate change. Next slide, please. So this was the CCAP development process, which began with a commitment by our government and our local city, that is Kisumu City. The next phase, we did the baseline studies. So we did the risk and vulnerability assessment, we did the access to energy assessment, and we also did the baseline emission inventory. My focus will be on access to energy assessment. More details for those who will be interested in what we found in general from the baseline emission assessment and from the risk and vulnerability assessment. Those documents are available for you, and you can read them at the document level. So we have also reached now the stage of development of the climate action plan, which we just finished sometime early this year. Next slide, please. So Kisumu County is one of the 47 counties of Kenya. Kenya is in East Africa. Kisumu is a lake region area. Lake Victoria is we are known for being the lake people in that city. highly dependent on fish trade and agriculture. So we look at the population and we see that the population in Kisumu, we have more female than males. That already starts bringing a dynamic of gender in our county. Next slide, please. So we had our results that focused on access to energy in two ways, that is lighting, energy for lighting, and energy for cooking. The approach that we used in this study was a participatory approach. There was a stakeholder engagement where institutions came together. Relevant institutions playing different roles, bringing new life into the project, people who are in funding, people who are administrators, policy drivers, infrastructure developers all came together. Another approach that we used was the household surveys, where we were able to have around 1,000 households from whom we collected the data. So these were the results that we got. Well, largely access to electricity, we are at 83%, 50% of which we have households accessing green power. Largely in Kenya, our power is renewable. That is, we have hydro and geothermal power. 33% of these households are accessing solar, and this is in a very small scale. You can see it is at 0.036 kilowatt hours, and that means that this solar energy is it's so small. It's just for lighting probably 3 to 4 bulbs, 3 to 5 bulbs in a house. Nothing more than that, nothing grand, despite us being at the equator level where we have a lot of sunshine. And the households which were not connected to electricity, the main reason for them not doing so is because they started it to be very expensive. And so that is why they do not have electricity. Next slide, please. Moving on to energy for cooking, you can see that largely we still rely on charcoal and firewood as the primary source of energy for cooking in this region. And this probably is in line or the same as most other cities in Sub-Saharan Africa, where we largely depend on firewood and charcoal. Electricity is very minimal at 1.5%. Electricity, despite it being clean, is not quite used for cooking. We also see that biogas is at 0.2%. So at this point, biogas was because they did not have the technical know-how of how to convert this waste, which has the potential to generate biogas into an energy form that it could use. So another aspect of this statistic is that in the urban areas, it was different. LPG is used more. And when you move towards the rural areas, you find that they're using more biomass, that is, they're using more charcoal and firewood for cooking. Next slide, please. So we wanted to sit down together with these groups because one of the ways in which we wanted to include gender in this project was having focus group discussions. We had 7 focus group discussions, that is across the 7 sub-counties. The county is divided into 7 regions. So in each region, we had focus group discussions, which brought women, men, youth, persons with disability, and more importantly, the administrative persons in that area. We have the chiefs in those areas who are part of these focus group discussions. So many things came out of these focus group discussions. Perhaps we're going to see them. Next slide, please. So we are seeing some trend in Kisumu that men are responsible for getting this firewood and this, the men are responsible for getting firewood. And it made us to ask further questions. What is happening? There is the norm that women are in charge of cooking, and that still stands at 93%. Most of the households in this city or in this county are in charge of kitchens. But an element where now men are the ones who are in charge of obtaining this firewood rate, quite a question. So, on reflections on these results, we were able to see that they have moved from fetching firewood, that is going out in the fields to go and collect firewood and bring it to the homesteads. They are buying it. They are buying firewood from enterprises within the region, and that means that it has been commercialized. And the economic aspect of it is now putting burden to them. And this kind of answers a question and raises more questions. Because from what we saw, the time taken reduced significantly, okay? To most of them obtaining their source of firewood between 1 hour and less. In fact, much less, 30 minutes. And you already have your source of energy for cooking. It has solved a bit of time poverty that is linked to issues of affecting women in energy. But is there another problem that has been created? That is still a question mark which the research did not go further to investigate. But we believe there is something that needs to be looked at beyond distance for time collected, distance taken, that is the distance covered in the collection of the firewood and the time taken. Those were two attributes that are recommended in the CCAP toolbox that was used in collecting this data. So we are hoping that the norm, I don't know whether it will be the same norm of women and collection of firewood in the other cities, or it's just peculiar to Kisumu. Very interesting to further investigate. But for now, it will stop there. And, men in Kisumu City are in charge of finding a way of firewood being available in the kitchens for their women to cook. Next slide, please. So we have talked about how we really tried to do the participatory approach, how we tried to integrate, that is the women, the men, the youth, persons with disability in our work. It started at the Stakeholders Engagement Forum, where we brought institutions, we brought people of high influence, people of high interest together, sitting down, and different departments of the county. And then went down to the level of household surveys, where we found interesting results that I've shared with you before. And then further beyond that, we had focused group discussions. So all these sessions brought together interesting bits that we want to now take into the development of our action plans, where our action plans are centered at household level. The action plans have been generated to focus at household level and community level, where our civil society organizations are a target, and our youth and our women have been factored in. So I think up to there, next slide please. We can see that gender really is at the center of what we're talking about in terms of energy access, but there are things around it that must be factored in, must be brought to the center of gender. Issues of affordability of this energy, issues of reliability of this energy, and sustainability, and of course, climate change. Next slide, please. Yeah, merci. Thank you so much for listening to me. I am done.
Thank you so much, Adela, for this presentation that showcases very well the link between gender and access to energy, the question of clean cooking, but also outlines very concrete tools and the importance of, first of all, collecting sex-disaggregated data when actually developing such studies and baseline studies. It's so important to be able to then draw those conclusions later on. Before continuing, it was just flagged to me by the translator a quick question: who's actually using the Portuguese headsets? I think they just wanted to know or assess the need for translation into Portuguese at this stage. I think we have two speakers here. I hope that answers your question. Okay. So thanks again, Ada, for this, and we'll have again the time to dive a bit more on those concrete tools that you mentioned. But let's just keep in mind indeed those focus groups, those household surveys, all these type of stakeholder engagement that are also outlined in the participatory approaches, gender guides. So thank you for this. Now I would like to give the floor to two great speakers. We have the chance to have two representatives from Maputo City today with us. So we have Gilda Florentina Samuel, who's the Municipal Director of the Service of Social Actions at the Maputo Metropolitan Area. Our area of work is protection and empowerment of women and girls and vulnerable population, specifically women and children, head of household, and people with disabilities or the elderly. I also would like to welcome Loide Masaide Castillo David, who is the Municipal Deputy Director of Mobility, Transport and Traffic at the Maputo City Council. She's a civil engineer, and she had actually in her career had the opportunity to learn and study the transport systems of some African, Asian, and American cities along the way. She has a very multi-sectoral approach in developing studies and strategies around universal accessibility in Maputo cities. So I'm very happy to have both of them present today to talk to us about a very concrete project or urban mobility project that is being implemented in Maputo City, and really being able to outline and showcase the direct link between gender and mobility, and how when we look at infrastructure projects related to climate and energy and urban mobility is often a sector tackled in a lot of CoM SSA CCAP, so climate and energy action plans. But it's also important to think of this sector and those actions from a gender point of view, so they will have the opportunity to outline that for us. So thank you. The floor is yours.
Boa tarde a todas e a todos. Como já foi dito, eu me chamo Gilda Florentina Samuel, sou médica e trabalho no Conselho Municipal de Maputo como diretora de ação social. Eu trabalho com grupos vulneráveis na cidade de Maputo, mulheres, pessoas com deficiência e todos os outros grupos discriminados. E desde 2017 o Conselho Municipal trabalha em cooperação e parceria com a Agência Metropolitana de Transporte, a Agência Metropolitana de Barcelona e também a Arquitetura Sem Fronteiras, uma parceria para tornar a cidade mais fácil, mais disponível também para mulheres.
Boa tarde a todos e a todas. Obrigada, Vanessa, pela apresentação detalhada. Chamo-me Laura Sangai, sou diretora adjunta de Mobilidade, Transportes e Trânsito no município de Maputo. Sou engenheira civil de transportes e para nós é um prazer muito grande estar aqui para falar um pouco do nosso processo de inclusão e transversalidade do gênero na mobilidade urbana a nível de Maputo. A nossa apresentação vai seguir quatro pontos específicos, nomeadamente as três ideias de contexto, basicamente a sustentabilidade, a mobilidade e a inclusão, a metodologia que ao andar destes 5 anos de projetos e processo, fomos construindo e consolidando para o nosso trabalho as 5 linhas estratégicas e as ferramentas que fomos desenvolvendo e que temos estado a consolidar. E, por último, uma lista breve sobre os objetivos que pretendemos alcançar com todo este trabalho que temos vindo a desenvolver.
Então, a cidade de Maputo localiza-se no sul do país de Moçambique e é a capital do país também, e faz parte da área metropolitana de Maputo, que com os municípios da Matola, de Boane e Distrito de Maracanã fazem esta área, com cerca de 346 km² e uma população da área metropolitana de Maputo estimada em cerca de 2.600.000 habitantes. A cidade é formada por 2 partes, que é a parte formal, com assentamentos organizados, e a parte informal, com assentamentos informais, com vários problemas de mobilidade pelo meio dos bairros. A seguir.
Bem, quando falamos de mobilidade, pessoas, território, espaço urbano, pressupõe-se que há uma necessidade inerente de pessoas e bens movimentarem-se no espaço público. E com base nisto, em 2018, nós levamos a cabo inquéritos e uma pesquisa sobre as necessidades de viagens a nível da nossa cidade. E tivemos aqui resultados bastante interessantes que levaram-nos a concluir que homens e mulheres movimentam-se de forma diferente no contexto urbano. Só a título de exemplo das pessoas inquiridas neste processo, verificou-se que os homens, contrariamente às mulheres, realizam viagens mais longas e mais objetivas, ao passo que as mulheres realizam viagens mais curtas, com conexões complexas e muitas vezes com recursos a vários modos de transporte na mesma viagem. Isto porque as mulheres estão sobre a maior responsabilidade dos assuntos domésticos. Nos nossos inquéritos verificamos que, a nível da nossa cidade, a maior parte dos homens detém licenças de condução, ao passo que as mulheres não, o que faz com que as mulheres estejam mais dependentes do transporte público. E um dado muito interessante que conseguimos verificar é que homens e mulheres têm percepção totalmente diferente sobre a segurança no transporte público. Ao passo que os homens percebem que o transporte público é seguro, as mulheres sentem e percebem-o de forma diferente. Isto para dizer que as mulheres sentem-se inseguras no transporte público. Bem, em termos muito genéricos, a nossa pesquisa levou a concluir que as mulheres, pelas modalidades e afazeres que têm que realizar diariamente, acabam gastando cerca de 2 a 6 vezes mais e pagando cerca de 2 a 6 vezes mais pelo transporte comparativamente aos homens.
As imagens mostram, nós temos desafios que não vou aqui muito detalhar, olhando ali a primeira figura na cena, que é uma multidão esperando o transporte. Os desafios estão relacionados com a priorização de viaturas ou carros em relação às pessoas no uso do espaço público. Temos desafios físicos, como mostram as imagens, tem viaturas por cima dos passeios e também temos os passeios não protegidos. Se olharmos ali, tem uma imagem de uma pessoa com deficiência visual que vai andando, tem um precipício que ele não consegue detectar, e a enchente dentro do transporte público, que as pessoas quase que ficam umas por cima das outras. Assim. E qual é a metodologia que nós usamos? Nós somos 3 instituições A seguir, 3 instituições, 4 que nós nos unimos, quando digo que 3 parceiros que se juntam ao Conselho Municipal de Maputo, que é a primeira imagem que representa o emblema do Conselho Municipal de Maputo. A seguir é a Agência Metropolitana de Transportes, a Arquitetura Sem Fronteira e a Agência Metropolitana de Barcelona, que é o nosso parceiro também técnico que vai ensinando e aprendendo de nós que nós fazemos. E os objetivos dessa nossa parceria são para criar a sustentabilidade das atividades que nós realizamos e também a equidade e o estado de bem-estar geral da população, homens e mulheres, e também a mobilidade, que deve ser de uma forma equitativa entre homens e mulheres. Trabalhamos em conjunto numa ideia de chuva de ideias e, à medida que nós vamos pensando, vamos realizar os nossos projetos, contratos. A seguir. Então, continuamos trabalhando nesta que nós estamos a dizer, sustentabilidade, a equidade de mobilidade dentro da cidade, a equidade, a inclusão de gênero em todos os aspectos que estão relacionados com a nossa mobilidade dentro da cidade de Maputo, tornando ela uma cidade mais simpática e acolhedora também para as mulheres e outros grupos discriminados. Slide seguinte. Next.
Bem, aqui nós apresentamos a nossa linha do tempo em relação ao nosso processo de transformação e consolidação. Dizer que iniciamos em 2017 e neste percurso temos estado a realizar pesquisas, análises, avaliações, projetos específicos no espaço público para garantir a mudança de paradigmas, a mudança efetiva na vida das pessoas, em especial na vida das mulheres e pessoas socialmente discriminadas. Dizer que no âmbito do nosso trabalho já tivemos algumas realizações, embora estejamos conscientes de que a transformação leva tempo e precisa de tempo para a sua consolidação, mas estamos cientes de que estamos no caminho certo para o alcance daquilo que é o objetivo macro, que é a inclusão efetiva das questões de género na mobilidade urbana a nível da nossa cidade. No nosso processo, fomos construindo uma metodologia de trabalho e desenvolvemos as ações a 2 níveis. O primeiro nível é o nível político, onde existe um comitê misto, onde as entidades que a minha colega mencionou anteriormente sentam-se de tempos em tempos para definir aquilo que são os objetivos, os projetos específicos a implementar, e temos também o nosso nível técnico, do qual temos o privilégio de fazer parte, para a implementação específica e desenho mais específico daquilo que são as nossas ações.
Então, deixe-nos partilhar a nossa estratégia, como nós fazemos e quais são as ferramentas que nós usamos. Sabe seguir? Next, please. Temos 5 estratégias que nós aplicamos. A primeira é a produção de dados, né, que deve nos levar a conhecer o que é que nós queremos fazer, qual é o problema. E depois, as ações que devem acontecer no espaço a ser intervencionado, placemaking, e a seguir também o conhecimento. Fazemos as capacitações para que as pessoas, tanto técnicos como os políticos, tenham conhecimento capaz em relação aos assuntos de gênero e também a emissão de políticas que devem orientar essas nossas atividades e a criação de consciência nas pessoas, nos cidadãos, nos técnicos e também nos políticos que vamos ter que trabalhar nesta atividade.
Trazemos aqui alguns exemplos específicos das ações que temos demandado neste processo. Neste slide, mostramos aqui um mapa de segurança e violência que foi desenvolvido com base num estudo específico numa linha de transporte público, onde, com base em pesquisas e inquéritos, foi possível depreender aquilo que eram os pontos quentes da nossa linha de transporte público em termos de segurança. E vários fatores acabam influenciando na nossa realidade para a percepção de insegurança no espaço público, em especial nas paragens e terminais do transporte público. A nossa pesquisa levantou alguns aspectos, como a existência de espaços abandonados próximos às paragens, a existência de moradores de rua próximo a estes locais, bem como a falta de iluminação pública, são alguns dos exemplos que a nossa pesquisa trouxe e demonstrou que havia necessidade de fazermos algum trabalho multissetorial no sentido de reduzir aquilo que são as zonas de fragilidade a nível da nossa linha. Este foi um projeto piloto, mas que pretendemos desenvolver e ampliar para toda a nossa rede de transporte público a nível da cidade de Maputo. Aqui trazemos um exemplo de intervenção no espaço público. Dizer que esta foi a primeira intervenção que nós fizemos num ponto de paragem que serve a 2 escolas, uma igreja e um mercado. Portanto, é uma área bastante demandada e por isso foi estrategicamente escolhido para fazer a avaliação e análise das necessidades para a implantação de um espaço de paragem seguro e inclusivo. E do trabalho que foi feito, foi possível intervir nesta área com a instalação de alguns dispositivos de redução de velocidade, instalação da sinalização rodoviária, instalação da informação sobre o transporte público que passa neste corredor, bem como a colocação do abrigo, bancos de espera e dispositivos de segregação da circulação pedonal e circulação rodoviária. E dizer que, com base nesta intervenção, foi possível fazer uma análise mais detalhada e produzir um manual de procedimentos para a instalação de espaços de paragens seguros e inclusivos, que vamos falar um pouco mais adiante.
Então, continuando, nós fazemos estas atividades que é para permitir que as pessoas possam circular, priorizar a circulação e dividir em questões de veículos motorizados e dos peões, por onde andam os carros, por onde andam as pessoas. O nosso projeto piloto foi no Hospital Central de Maputo, que é o maior hospital do país, que recebe muitas pessoas, e lá foi feita a requalificação do espaço público com colocação de bancos e sombras, de modo que as mulheres que se dirigem, o espaço fica mesmo em frente à maternidade do hospital. De modo que as pessoas que vão à maternidade ou que tiveram alta da maternidade, enquanto esperam os carros venham buscar, têm um espaço seguro para sentar e esperar. E também foi priorizado o espaço de aliviar o passeio, para que os carros não possam cavalgar em passeio e deixar que este espaço seja mesmo para a circulação de peões. O outro nosso foco são as escolas, e também fazemos esta priorização do trânsito, permitindo uma segurança na circulação das nossas crianças da escola para casa e de casa para a escola, fazendo com que sejam colocados sinais bem visíveis e a colocação de sinais de direção, como disse a minha colega. Em relação ao Hospital Central de Maputo, também fazemos a pacificação das vias dentro do hospital. É um hospital grande e que circulam viaturas dentro do hospital. E as viaturas e as pessoas que já, algumas por estar no hospital, têm mobilidade reduzida, fica difícil só a mobilidade rápida para se estivar as viaturas. Então, colocamos lá dentro do hospital, organizar por onde as pessoas devem circular e por onde os carros também devem circular. O objetivo dessas ações todas é a criação de um espaço público, não é? Que seja também privilegiado para as mulheres e para todos os outros grupos discriminados que às vezes nem sabem que estão a ser discriminados, e facilitar a mobilidade dentro da metrópole, e também a distribuição equitativa de espaços públicos e também a requalificação, a situação das ruas dentro do Hospital Central de Dakar, e facilitar o acesso entre o redor da cidade e o hospital, que é um hospital que recebe muita gente e precisa que os carros parem próximo ao hospital, de modo que as pessoas possam ter acesso de uma forma rápida. E garantir também a segurança rodoviária para todas as pessoas, incluindo nas escolas que nós fazemos lá, e conservar os espaços públicos. A seguir.
Outro tipo de intervenção que temos privilegiado é a capacitação técnica, capacitação institucional e a troca de experiência. Nesta imagem nós trazemos aqui a primeira imagem que retrata um treinamento que foi ministrado aos motoristas e cobradores de transporte público a nível da cidade em matérias de assédio sexual dentro do transporte público. Esta capacitação foi ministrada no sentido de garantir que a tripulação, neste caso os motoristas e cobradores, pudessem ser o agente primário de resposta a este tipo de situação dentro do transporte público, porque julgamos que eles têm um papel extremamente importante para a extinção deste tipo de situação. E temos estado a trabalhar de forma colaborativa no sentido de definir protocolos de resposta à situação de assédio a nível do transporte público. E a segunda imagem mostra a capacitação técnica e troca de experiência com empresas de transporte público a nível da cidade de Maputo. Bem, esta imagem trouxemos para dar a conhecer sobre os manuais de procedimentos que são resultado e ferramenta do nosso trabalho. Temos aqui, acho que a colega Sara também está a passar na sala, este que é o primeiro caderno de procedimentos que nós desenvolvemos com base no estudo e no trabalho feito nos espaços de paragem. Então, este é um documento técnico bastante objetivo, que tem como perspectiva orientar a todos no sentido de garantir que estejam cumpridas os requisitos básicos para a instalação de pontos de paragem seguros e inclusivos. Também temos este, que é o caderno de procedimentos mais recente que foi elaborado, que é o caderno de procedimentos para a promoção da mobilidade com equidade de género e diversidades. Este caderno é um caderno que pressupõe ou que traz elementos bastante importantes para a reflexão sobre a inclusão da equidade de género e diversidade na tomada de decisão.
E a nossa última estratégia é a consciencialização dos cidadãos, dos técnicos e dos políticos. E nós fazemos a nossa consciencialização cidadã com a realização da nossa campanha de sensibilização contra o assédio sexual no transporte público. Como vem, nós usamos aqui um dispositivo que diz não à violência dentro do transporte público. E também, temos a Semana de Mobilidade Sustentável, que vamos agora para a 5ª edição, que é um espaço onde os técnicos, os parceiros vão fazer a troca de experiência, intervenções através de workshops, de seminários, de troca de experiências e intervenções concretas em espaços públicos para tornar a cidade mais segura e mais fácil de se movimentar, incluindo para as mulheres e as pessoas com diminuição da mobilidade. Então, nesta semana, são várias atividades que são tomadas ao nível do município para se equipar e vamos lá reunindo e decidindo aquilo que nós temos que fazer com os nossos parceiros.
Estamos aqui a falar de mobilidade, inclusão e transversalidade do gênero na mobilidade urbana. Achamos justo trazer aqui uma das reflexões máximas do nosso caderno de procedimentos para a promoção da equidade de gênero e diversidades, que nos propõe a fazer uma análise dos 3 Qs. Sempre que pensamos em tomar alguma decisão, sempre que nos propomos a realizar algum projeto, que façamos uma reflexão sobre estes 3 Qs, que nada mais são que 3 questões específicas. A primeira, temos estado a considerar as questões de género nas nossas decisões, nos nossos projetos, nas nossas iniciativas? Será que as nossas decisões, os nossos projetos têm afetado, influenciam ou beneficiam a homens e mulheres de igual forma? E a terceira questão é, se não influenciam da mesma forma, até que ponto são diferentes? Estas são dicas muito simples e concretas para promover aquilo que é a reflexão dos tomadores de decisão, dos técnicos das áreas específicas, para a questão de consideração da inclusão do gênero na mobilidade.
E como dissemos no princípio, que homens e mulheres deslocam-se, utilizam a cidade de uma forma diferente, constatamos no nosso estudo que as mulheres são prejudicadas apenas porque são mulheres. E para incluir o gênero na mobilidade, nós temos um checklist de atividades que devem acontecer. A primeira é incluir o gênero, não é? A perspectiva de gênero na mobilidade, não é? E também a segunda atividade que deve acontecer é envolver, não é? E construir a consciência técnica, política, para que aspectos de gênero sejam, de fato, levados em conta por todos, e a produção de dados e informações que devem ser disseminados que mostram essas desigualdades, e também remover os mitos e barreiras que impedem com que aspectos relacionados com mulheres sejam levados em conta, para que os técnicos possam ter conhecimento do que deve ser feito, como deve ser feito, e também a produção de campanhas para a consciencialização do público em geral e dos políticos, dos técnicos também, e a inclusão e participação no espaço público por todos os que são intervenientes. E muito obrigada por nos terem escutado. Terminamos por aqui a nossa apresentação. Obrigada a todos.
Thank you so much for this very comprehensive and very inspiring presentation on the project of Maputo. I feel like this is such a great example of how a project can be truly gender responsive from the start. We provided us with so many great examples of activities or aspects to take into account. One thing that I also would like to take from this, I think also just coming from you both being here presenting, is Jill, that you're representing more of the social policy chapter of the city, and you more of the technical, coming from the traffic department. And I think that's also at the core of the vision when wanting to implement truly gender transformative action, is to break the silos even within the local governments, and making sure that all these activities are actually developed hand in hand taking into account the social aspect as well as the more practical and technical as well. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and also leaving us with some very interesting guiding questions and this practical checklist, which is I think also another thing to add to our toolbox of tools that we provide the city. So that's a great actually transition to Lucy, who's going to present us basically the tools that we've been working on lately at CoM SSA to provide cities who want to start developing such a gender responsive or even better gender transformative actions when looking at their urban infrastructure projects. So Lucy is professional officer at Climat Africa, where she works on the Covenant of Maires Sub-Saharan Africa. Prior to joining ICLE, she worked on a lot of adaptation projects, including for looking at GCF proposals when it comes to that. And currently she's working on several aspects, including adaptation planning and gender in CoM SSA. So Lucy, the floor is yours.
So I'll present some recent tools that we've been working on because we'd like to make the CoM SSA initiative more gender inclusive and do more gender mainstreaming work within the initiative. So this comes from observing that mainly on the methodology to develop sustainable energy access and climate action plan, the CIRCAPs. I'll just call them energy and access action, energy and climate action plans to go shorter. We've realized that the methodology is first of all based on European cities and also gender neutral. There's not much guidance on how to integrate gender for adaptation, mitigation, access to energy planning within these plans. So we're trying to develop resources that could guide local governments and practitioners that are working on these CIRCAPs to integrate gender more strongly. So we, first of all, reviewed the CIRCAP toolbox, which is a tool to unpack how to develop a CIRCAP. It's a hands-on tool, it's slides, available on the CoM SSA website in both French and English, to really guide local governments and practitioners step by step on how to develop a CIRCAP. And this toolbox was reviewed by 2 gender experts between November last year and March this year. So they went through more than 600 slides to try and see where the methodology is lacking gender mainstreaming and inclusivity in general, and how it could be better adapted to the context of local governments in Sub-Saharan Africa. And the second tool that I'm going to present briefly is gender guides that we started developing only recently, and hopefully we can build a collection of these resources that will be available on the CoM SSA website to guide local governments along the way. So on the CIRCAP toolbox, if you're not familiar with the tool, it's, as I just said, a step-by-step guide on how to develop a CIRCAP. And we recently added modules on post-CIRCAP work. So once you have a CIRCAP, what do you do to build strong project proposals? How do you communicate on your CIRCAP? And so from the genders review, we've got some very interesting comments that's applicable to the CIRCAP toolbox, but also more generally in our work. How do we do adaptation, mitigation, and access to energy planning in a more inclusive way? So I'm just going to show you a few examples of comments that we received. So for example, the need for the toolbox tool to unpack the local government's constraints and mandates to develop a CIRCAP, as well as clearly articulate motivation and specific benefits for every step of CIRCAP development. So we have a very technical tool that tells you how to develop a greenhouse gas inventory for a Sub-Saharan African city, but it doesn't really show the benefits to do it. And I think there's a lot more that we need to unpack on this aspect. There's also a comment, for example, grounding the facts presented about Sub-Saharan African climate risk within the context of historical legacy of extraction, imperialism, colonialism. So in the current tools that we see, the methodologies that we have to do adaptation, mitigation, and energy planning, we don't really see this grounding the facts. So we've updated the CIRCAP toolbox to add some slides explaining, putting the CIRCAP process a bit more into context. We also got comments on acknowledging the inequitable legacy that have bred climate risk, so it's quite a linked comment. The gender experts also recommended that we develop a lot more guidance on how to make the CIRCAP process more participatory, how to do an inclusive workshop where all the different departments of the local government are included, and how to make it just more balanced between gender, between abilities, etc. We also need to use nearer timeframes for the people in the room that are working on CIRCAPs. We need to really align with what the realities of the local government are and what are the relevant planning and political cycles, and explain key terms in the glossary. So we made these changes, and you can find the updated CIRCAP toolbox on the CoM SSA website. And so the second aspect of the work we recently did is developing some guides. So these guides are short, it's just a 10-page, I'm just going to show it there. And they're targeted at local governments. One of them is to how to conduct a gender analysis for project development, and the other one is how to use a participatory inclusive approach to CIRCAP development, but also project development in general. So for these two guides, we try to place gender mainstreaming within the project development cycle and see what are all the different tools that could be used to mainstream gender within this project development cycle. So for the first guide, we first explain the first guide place gender mainstreaming in the project development cycle. It just explains that basically it's not just a tick box exercise to do gender analysis at the beginning of a project development and then you're done with it. It's throughout the project cycle you actually need to follow all these steps and you have all these tools available. And then we zoom into how to conduct a gender analysis, and it's a step-by-step guide to do one with case studies based in Sub-Saharan African cities to illustrate how to do a gender analysis. So we also put a lot of links to relevant resources where data can be accessed, because it's such a data-heavy process to develop these projects, to develop these CIRCAPs, that we really try to link it to relevant resources. And in the gender guide number 2, we're looking more at how to use a participatory approach for project development. So, next slide. First we explain what it means, and then we look at all the different tools again where you could use to use this approach throughout the project development cycle. So, for example, here during the project design, we can have exploratory walks, where it's a group of women that walks within the city and identify some climate risks and how specific they are to their own needs. So we list all these tools and then we illustrate them with case studies. And we found it quite challenging to find detailed case studies on how gender is actually mainstream in climate projects in Sub-Saharan African cities. So it was quite inspiring to hear a few more case studies today. And yeah, I think we really need to do more of this work in this space. especially because, oh yeah, I forgot about it. So we have also developed a short glossary of key terms, and I think it's going to be a living document, and there's going to be more key terms that are going to come into it with time. So it's accessible at the end of both the guides with a QR code. So you can just scan it. And it's, yeah, and that's about it for the recent resources that we've been developing. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Lucy, for the overview and also for working tremendously on this set of resources for the past year together. Yeah, indeed, it's very important for us to be able to provide such concrete examples and to still be able to feed new case studies and new examples, and for sure, I think Maputo's example will make it into the next guide. But let's still take a few minutes to hear another last example for today, which is the city of Nouakchott, and specifically on public lighting. And how gender-responsive public lighting can also be implemented. And for this, we'll also thank our colleagues from AFD who have developed a specific publication that is also available on our CoM SSA Gender webpage that you can access with the QR code. But for this, I would like to welcome Mobilité, who works for the region of Nouakchott, where she coordinates two projects, one on urban transport and public lighting, and more specifically, she's also coordinator for CoM SSA project there. So Mobilité, the floor is yours to tell us a bit more about this public lighting project in Nouakchott. Faut juste allumer le... And that's what I was going to talk to in French so you can activate your headset.
Là, qui est la phase 3 de la CoM SSA et un autre projet qui s'appelle Avant. Un autre projet qui s'appelle Avant qui travaille sur et qui travaille en fait sur la question de l'éclairage public et du transport. Donc, la slide suivante. Donc aujourd'hui, je suis là pour présenter une étude qui a été faite dans le cadre de la CoM SSA, qui a été demandée par l'AFD, qui a dressé en fait une situation assez inégalitaire du genre et des personnes vulnérables dans les projets d'éclairage public en Afrique subsaharienne. Et cette étude avait en fait pour objectif d'analyser en fait dans quelle mesure les projets d'éclairage public pouvaient améliorer la situation d'insécurité, en tout cas le sentiment d'insécurité, à travers une meilleure prise en compte des besoins des femmes et aussi des hommes, et plus particulièrement dans la planification de l'espace public. Et les résultats qui étaient attendus de cette étude étaient d'obtenir des recommandations opérationnelles et d'élaborer des outils et méthodologies pour l'identification, préparation et mise en œuvre de projets d'éclairage public global. En effet, dans nos villes en ce moment, en Afrique subsaharienne, beaucoup de projets d'éclairage public voient le jour. Il était important de prendre en considération cette question de genre qui n'est pas forcément très introduite dans ces projets-là, mais qui est quand même importante. C'est-à-dire que pendant cette étude, l'implémentation de cette étude de l'AFD, à Nouakchott, on venait de commencer le projet Avant, dont je vous ai parlé plus tôt, qui est un projet financé par l'Union européenne et qui travaille donc, comme je vous l'ai dit, sur la question du transport urbain et la question de la sécurité à travers l'éclairage public. Donc, ce sont les deux thématiques phares de ce projet. Et donc, c'est ce projet qui a été choisi pour effectuer un diagnostic, pour élaborer des recommandations concrètes, pratiques et spécifiques, pour qu'elles puissent directement être implémentées dans le projet Avant, mais également dans la phase 3 de la CoM SSA Nouakchott, qui a également un volet sur l'éclairage public. Donc il y a eu plusieurs méthodes de recherche qualitative, donc il y a une revue documentaire bien sûr, démarche exploratoire, comme on l'a entendu un peu plus tôt tout à l'heure avec Kikli qui présentait cette méthode pour intégrer la question genre. Il y a également eu des groupes de discussion thématiques et puis des entrevues avec des intervenants clés. Donc la région de Nouakchott, en fait, elle a participé dans cette étude en mettant les différents consultants en contact avec les personnes clés et puis surtout avec leur identification de ces personnes importantes à Nouakchott. Donc, pour cette étude, donc, un processus collaboratif a été mis en place. Donc, il y a eu plusieurs quartiers de cible, mais aussi des places spécifiques, comme par exemple des lieux de travail pour des vendeuses ambulantes. Donc, pour voir un peu cet aspect-là et l'importance de l'éclairage public pour ces personnes-là. Donc, au total, 19 personnes ont participé à 5 types de marchés exploratoires, dont l'itinéraire a été déterminé en partenariat avec les organisations de la société civile. Donc il y a une démarche avec des femmes uniquement et des marches exploratoires avec des hommes uniquement dans les différents quartiers ciblés dans Nouakchott. Certains dans le centre et d'autres dans la périphérie. Il y a eu également 3 groupes de discussion thématiques et c'est essentiellement avec des étudiants et des étudiantes donc, et qui ont été regroupés en fait par sexe, donc les femmes ensemble et les hommes ensemble. Et 5 entrevues ont pu être menées, donc 2 auprès des décideurs, des techniciens, et 2 auprès des leaders de communautés société civile et 1 auprès d'un partenaire de projet. Donc, les résultats de cette collecte des données ont montré que le manque en fait, d'éclairage public mène vraiment à un sentiment d'insécurité qui se décline par des craintes pour la sécurité physique, les craintes du crime, les craintes du harcèlement, de la violence sexuelle à Nouakchott. Et la totalité des 19 participants au marché exploratoire, hommes ou femmes, ont indiqué se sentir parfois en danger la nuit dans des quartiers où il n'y a pas d'éclairage public. Donc cette perception de sécurité est importante. Quand vous voyez la carte de Nouakchott, en rouge, ce sont les zones où ils considéraient que c'était des quartiers dangereux, et en vert, des quartiers moins dangereux, des quartiers sécuritaires. Et on voit qu'il y a en fait une forte corrélation entre ces quartiers, ce sentiment de sécurité et l'éclairage public. Les 2 quartiers que vous pouvez voir en vert sont le centre-ville et Tabarzen, qui est en fait le quartier un peu aisé de Nouakchott, qui sont les 2 quartiers aussi qui ont le plus d'éclairage public. Donc on voit vraiment cette corrélation entre les deux. Je pense que, si je ne me trompe pas, 75% de l'éclairage public à Nouakchott se trouve dans ces 2 zones. Ok. Pardon. Donc, je disais que quand on voit la carte de Nouakchott, on voit que les 2 quartiers qui sont où on se sent le plus en sécurité sont les quartiers qui sont les plus dotés d'éclairage public. Donc, il y a également cette corrélation qui peut être faite. Le manque d'éclairage public aussi affecte vraiment la vie sociale et économique de tous, mais il y a certains groupes qui ressentent davantage ce manque et les impacts négatifs, comme par exemple ces fameuses vendeuses ambulantes dans Nouakchott, mais aussi les jeunes femmes et les habitants des quartiers périphériques. C'est là-dessus. Donc, il y a eu différentes recommandations qui ont été issues de cette étude, et il y en a certaines que nous avons retenues, en tout cas là, pour les projets futurs. D'abord, le choix d'un système d'éclairage public efficace, parce qu'il est très important de choisir des technologies qui conviennent aux besoins d'éclairage de la population. Et par exemple, l'étude a déterminé que pour les Nouakchottois, ils préféraient plutôt une lumière blanche, forte, un peu froide, et puis favoriser surtout une meilleure maintenance et établir un système de signalement des équipements défectueux par les citoyens. Parce qu'on voit également qu'à Nouakchott, il y a beaucoup d'éclairages publics qui ne sont pas bien maintenus et donc ils sont défectueux. Donc c'est dommage aussi de faire des investissements aussi coûteux pour la région, pour l'État, et qui finalement seront défectueux très rapidement. Également assurer les capacités techniques des professionnels. Par exemple, pour le photovoltaïque. Donc, on a expérimenté pendant longtemps le photovoltaïque. On a fait en tout cas l'expérience du photovoltaïque au centre de Nouakchott, et qui maintenant est amené à être remplacé parce qu'il n'a pas eu la maintenance en tout cas qu'il faut, et qui est maintenant devenu défectueux. et puis surtout former les personnes qui sont en charge de l'éclairage public à leur cheville. Également, il faut consulter et impliquer les citoyens dans le choix, que ce soit des technologies, et puis également des forces de l'ordre pour faciliter leur travail, et puis renforcer la capacité de la société civile pour qu'elle puisse s'impliquer et conseiller les entités municipales responsables de la mise en place en fait, de cet éclairage public. Les approches sociales aussi, donc mener des campagnes de sensibilisation pour créer une appropriation des infrastructures. Alors là, on a fait une expérience à Nouakchott dans le cadre du projet Arédune, qui est en fait la phase 2 de la Convention des maires pour l'Afrique subsaharienne, de la CoM SSA, qui a eu lieu, qui est un projet qui a duré de 2017 à 2020. Et nous, en 2019, on a mis en place l'éclairage public dans des quartiers périphériques de Nouakchott. On a mis un petit projet pilote de 156 lampadaires dans 5 quartiers différents. Et on a vu un peu l'impact de ce projet qui était le renforcement du niveau de sécurité pour les populations, qui était un enjeu majeur pour les populations. Et aussi le développement d'activités économiques connexes à cet éclairage public. Redéploiement des boutiques, donc il y a des boutiques qui ont aussi augmenté leur chiffre d'affaires parce qu'ils ont pu ouvrir un peu plus tard dans la nuit alors qu'avant ils ne pouvaient pas par exemple. Il y a aussi des développements d'activités sociales comme les mariages, les baptêmes qui ont pu se dérouler également dans ces quartiers-là la nuit. La création même de coopératives qui ont pu travailler avec cet éclairage public. Et une attractivité de la zone éclairée, un sentiment de fierté des habitants de ces quartiers-là, qui parfois nous disaient, nous on est un peu le terrain, donc il y a en fait le quartier aisé, mais ils disent c'est le terrain de la zone, donc il y a vraiment un sentiment de fierté de ces populations-là dans ces quartiers un peu plus défavorisés et carrément à la périphérie de Nouakchott. Et puis aussi l'augmentation directe d'activité nocturne. Donc on a des projets aujourd'hui, donc nous aujourd'hui on est en train d'élaborer un plan directeur d'éclairage public pour la région de Nouakchott, en forte collaboration avec la Semaine, qui est la société d'électricité en Mauritanie, et qui elle gère le réseau d'éclairage public. Donc on a débuté ce schéma directeur depuis le mois de juin. On a déjà établi le diagnostic et nous sommes en train de réfléchir au scénario qu'on voudrait mettre en place pour l'éclairage public. On est également en train de recruter un consultant pour élaborer le dossier d'appel d'offres et surtout nous conseiller sur la solution d'éclairage public la plus efficace, en tout cas pour Nouakchott. Et surtout aussi de développer un système intelligent de gestion de l'éclairage public, peut-être qui peut aider à la maintenance ou au suivi en tout cas des lampadaires. Et puis on va lancer d'ici la fin de l'année un dossier d'appel d'offres pour mettre en place 1200 lampadaires, pour une partie financée par la CoM SSA phase 3, donc le projet phase 3, mais également par le projet à rendre et donc l'Union européenne directement. Alors moi, pour les autres villes d'Afrique subsaharienne qui veulent développer un projet d'éclairage public, mon premier conseil serait d'abord de partir d'un plan, parce que je pense que c'est important d'avoir un plan stratégique qui soit concerté, qui soit approprié par tous les acteurs de l'éclairage public, parce que souvent dans nos villes, c'est pas forcément uniquement la ville ou la région, c'est parfois la Société nationale d'électricité, c'est beaucoup d'autres acteurs, des communes, des habitants, etc. Il faut tous travailler ensemble pour arriver à une vision commune. Je pense que ça c'est important. Et puis aussi, une fois qu'on a mis, en tout cas, quand on est en train de mettre l'éclairage public et de mettre en place des comités de gestion de cet éclairage, et nous, notre expérience a montré que ces comités de gestion, quand ils étaient présidés par des femmes, souvent ça marchait très bien et il y avait une forte appropriation des habitants du quartier de l'éclairage public et qui étaient déjà des comités de gestion beaucoup plus dynamiques. Et donc il faut toujours essayer de les dynamiser également dans ces quartiers-là. Et puis surtout capitaliser les expériences passées pour ne pas retrouver dans les mêmes erreurs. Je pense que c'est l'un des points aussi importants qu'on est en train de travailler. C'est pour ça qu'on a pu faire à Nouakchott un diagnostic de l'expérience passée avec la région de Nouakchott en 2019 pour essayer de l'améliorer pour l'expérience qu'on aura en 2023. Voilà, je vous remercie.
Thanks a lot, Fatima, too, with this other great example as well. It just goes to show how concrete projects, if when they are well concerted, well developed, making sure that everybody's involved can lead to a great impact, but also making sure that we tackle those inequalities, and inequalities being sometimes also the lack of safety of some compared to others. So thanks. We'll still have time to take a couple of questions from the floor, if there are any. Please feel free to take advantage of the presence of our speakers to reach out directly now if you have any questions or comments. I'll come to you because I think we only have 1 mic. We only have 5 minutes, so please be short. In your concise, in your question. I'll take all the questions and then we'll give them the time. We can start.
Thank you. Eu vou falar em português. Espero que o serviço de tradução esteja disponível. Bom, eu vou começar por saudar as apresentações que tivemos, saudar necessariamente os painelistas e a moderadora. Meu nome é Firmino Guambi, eu sou vereador no município de Matola, portanto em Moçambique, uma cidade vizinha da cidade de Maputo. É uma cidade que tem algumas similaridades com a cidade de Kisumu, em Quênia. Tivemos aqui uma apresentação brilhante e vou começar por esta apresentação. Começando por dizer que pude acompanhar durante a apresentação que é uma cidade que tem cerca de 1,15 milhões de habitantes e também a população é maioritariamente feminina, que traz alguma similaridade com a cidade de Matola. A minha questão que gostaria de deixar aqui para a painelista de Kisumu é relativamente ao que diz respeito a matriz energética a longo prazo, tendo em conta que o uso da lenha e do carvão a longo prazo não é sustentável, porque isso demanda o desmatamento e em algum momento a destruição do mangal, que é um dos ecossistemas que nos permite ser mais resilientes, sobretudo às mudanças climáticas. Portanto, gostaria de ouvir da painelista quais são as propostas a longo prazo para a substituição desta fonte de energia e qual seria a matriz energética no futuro, tendo em conta também a questão de segurança energética para as famílias que precisam de ter esta fonte de energia para o uso doméstico, sobretudo no confeccionamento de refeições. Tenho a segunda, para a luz, a última. É relativamente aos guiões que foram aqui apresentados. Essa questão vai para a Lúcia da CoM SSA. Falou de guiões que vão ajudar, portanto, a trazer aquilo que é os impactos positivos desta necessidade de mudanças que as mulheres precisam acompanhar para poder aderir a este plano. Pronto, nós como governos locais temos enfrentado dificuldades para transmitir às mulheres de uma forma imediata para perceber os benefícios na mudança de paradigmas ou de práticas para que possamos ser resilientes, tendo em conta que é preciso ao mesmo tempo assegurar que eles tenham acesso à fonte de energia. Então, o que é que os guiões trazem para permitir esta transição? Obrigado.
Merci beaucoup. Merci pour la panélis. Et moi, c'est Tétier Sosna, je viens du Togo. Ma question s'adressait à la municipalité de Mobutu. J'aimerais savoir l'aménagement des arrêts de bus. Comment tiennent compte des personnes à mobilité réduite et des personnes malvoyantes, plus des personnes normales, normales comme tout le monde. L'aménagement des arrêts de bus pour que on va cette personne.
Bon, étant donné qu'on est contraint par le temps, je vais aller vite. Je veux juste poser une question. Ne pensez-vous pas que, par exemple, l'intégration de la réalité culturelle serait efficace pour intégrer l'aspect genre en fait, dans ces processus-là? Par exemple, si je prends au Sénégal, par exemple, nous avons des statistiques qui montrent qu'effectivement les femmes sont peu représentées dans les instances de décision. Et ça, ce n'est pas dû à l'État, parce que l'État est en train de faire des efforts. Donc, je vais vous donner justement quelques statistiques pour vous montrer cela. Oui, c'est vite fait. En fait, quand on prend les élections législatives, on a vu qu'effectivement, il y a une hausse de 2 points de pourcentage ici lors de la représentation des femmes à l'Assemblée nationale. Et dans l'éducation également, l'étude supérieure, on a 30% donc des femmes à l'étude supérieure. Par contre, parmi elles, chez les chercheurs, nous avons 25% de chercheurs. Donc, qu'est-ce que cela veut dire? Cela veut dire qu'effectivement, la plupart des femmes abandonnent parce qu'ils vont se marier bientôt. Et cela aussi peut se voir dans la fonction publique. Quand on vient dans la fonction publique, dans les échelons inférieurs, on voit le nombre de pourcentage des femmes qui sont mieux représentées que les hommes. On voit par exemple 39% contre 21% pour les hommes. Par contre, quand on vient chez les cadres supérieurs, on voit 15% seulement pour les femmes. Donc cela veut dire qu'effectivement, c'est corrélé à ce que j'avais dit tout à l'heure, c'est-à-dire qu'elles se marient vite fait. Excusez-moi, j'ai dit non.
Thank you so much for the questions. I think we've taken notes of this, and thanks to the translator, because we know we're all running out of time, so we'll do very short answers. So the translators bear with us. Maybe we can start with Maputo. So there was one question about concretely the bus stops. How do we make them accessible to personal disabilities? And also, I think some aspects of the mangroves and how do we. So that will be later, maybe for the Kisumu speaker. Thank you.
Bem, muito obrigada pela questão que foi colocada. Na verdade, nós, antes da implementação do modelo de paragem inclusivo, desenvolvemos um estudo bastante aprofundado sobre os modelos já existentes na nossa cidade e até que ponto estes modelos eram funcionais para todos, ou pelo menos para a maioria dos municípios da cidade de Maputo. Dizer que estamos num processo construtivo e inicialmente não conseguimos abarcar todas as diversidades, mas neste momento as nossas paragens de transporte são acessíveis a pessoas com mobilidade reduzida, são acessíveis, são seguras para mulheres, crianças e idosos, tem dispositivos para descanso e para espera durante o período em que se aguarda pelo transporte público. Infelizmente, ainda não foi acoplado nenhum equipamento para deficientes auditivos e visuais. Obrigada.
Thank you very much for your question, sir. You asked about where is the balance between using firewood and the resource being depleted. Where is the balance? Did I get the question right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. So we are seeing a situation where the use of firewood is still in excess and the resource is dwindling, okay? And we are creating another issue where we are shifting towards trading firewood because they are not able to get these resources naturally. That is walking, looking for the firewood, and then utilizing it. So one thing that we need to put as an action plan, which will have already as an action plan is a nature-based approach, which is planting of trees within the communities, so that you are able to access trees within your homestead, not just community, but within your homestead. You should be able to access firewood within your homestead. That will cut down your time for getting the firewood, and it will also reduce your distance for getting the firewood. And at the same time, we are also addressing issues of climate change in terms of mitigation and adaptation. I hope I answered it. And other than that, or rather additionally, we are focusing on technology, that is use of improved cook stoves in our communities, where we train youth, we train women in making of these improved cook stoves, which ideally use little firewood, and at the same time supporting these community-based organizations.
Thank you so much. Maybe a last word from Lucy. Maybe you are commenting on the intervention of our colleague from Senegal and those important statistics.
Yeah, sure. So for your the last question, yeah. So I don't know if you're involved in project packaging, in developing projects, but if you are, I would suggest that if you follow this guideline on how to develop a gender analysis, you would collect all this kind of data to try and understand at the policy level, but also in the norms and practices, what's the current baseline, trying to understand what's the sex disaggregated data to access positions of power, what are the practices in terms of roles and responsibilities within a household, everything to inform projects and actions that a city can take in terms of climate change and access to energy, etc. But it's informed by these statistics and data on gender.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, and thank you to all the panelists who have taken the time to prepare this session with me. I was very honored to actually moderate this female-only panel, a very rare one nowadays. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you all for your attention. Just to mention again, the guides are available online and also at our CoM SSA booth. We have circulated a satisfaction survey, which is more or less just an opportunity for us to collect your feedback, but also if you want to engage further with us on this topic, we're more than happy to reach out to you. So please do not hesitate. And again, just wanted to highlight how important this topic is and continues to be in our area of intervention. I think as the previous speaker, the speaker in the previous session mentioned, in all good projects, it's also important to be able to assess the co-benefit, and that also includes the social impact, and to be able to demonstrate the social impact of any given climate and energy project. And I think the case study and the examples we had today from Kisumu, Maputo, and Nouakchott really helped outline how you can basically do that assessment and highlight that. So thanks everyone, and thanks for bearing with us a bit over time, and a huge thanks to the translators as well, who've been doing a tremendous job.